Yeah, I think, I think with forgiveness, if we don't forgive, I think it's the equivalent of drinking poison, expecting someone else to die, right?
Mm,
Like I'm sure you guys have heard that, but you know, the thing about forgiveness is it's not letting someone off the hook. It's
mhm.
important to note that you're not they're not. Number one, we can't look at life as a competition, but you're not letting them off the hook. You're doing what's best for you, right? Because chances are the person that you don't forgive isn't really worried about your forgiveness, or they probably wouldn't have put you in that position anyway. So what are you going to do? Just let it eat you
Yeah.
for years and years and years, and there's this false, like Brendan said, there's this false sense of bravado um, with men. And I'm really, what I think it is, I think it's really fear.
Mhm.
We're trying to put this mask on to cover
Mm.
fear, to cover insecurity and those things. And, one of the things I do is I do jail ministry. Right. So I'll walk into a dorm and I'll tell guys, I just want to let you know right now that all you are weak. Right now, imagine that, right? This guy walks in and he goes, I'm like, y'all are weak. I'm weak. You're weak. We're all weak. We're all weak men. They're like, oh, I ain't weak. You
Yeah.
are. Because if you weren't weak, then there wouldn't be jails, right? We wouldn't
Mhm.
need jails. We wouldn't need organizations like mine. And it's not bad to be weak, and it doesn't have anything to do with what you bench press or what you curl, right? It's about we can't do life by ourselves. We can't do it. We're not designed to do it, and we have the strength in Christ that only He can provide. But when we try to do things ourselves, that's where the unforgiveness comes. That's where that
Yeah.
that pride and ego, and really pride and ego is just a mask for I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to pretend I know what I'm doing so you don't think ill of me. And that's why authentic
Yeah.
relationships are important. We should, like,
Mhm.
even just now meeting some of you guys, our next conversation in reality, if I had something on my chest, I should be able to just open up to you all and say, hey, this is, whether it's embarrassing, whether, no matter what, I should be able to say that and have some good feedback. Right. And,
Absolutely.
and that's what it really is. That's the transparency level. I think there's 5 levels of transparency, and transparency being the 5th level. But we have these cliche levels, right, where we're just kind of, how you doing, man? I'm good.
Yeah.
We're all about that. I'm good. But I think if we don't practice forgiveness, then we're not teaching our children either. We're
Mm.
not teaching our children, like for example, in our house, we don't say sorry. We say, "Will you forgive me?" Because I just think it's just heavier, and it just hits different, right? Sorry is something that my kids do when I say, "Hey, you shouldn't have done that. You need to apologize." I'm sorry, right? Y'all know how it
Yeah,
goes,
yeah,
right? I'm sorry, but you're not really sorry. You're just
Yeah.
sorry you got caught.
Right.
But forgiveness, to
right.
look at somebody and say, "Hey, I forgive you," and what that does is when you forgive others, that might be the one thing that softens their heart, right? That takes their heart of stone and puts a heart of flesh. And then they go, man, if this guy can forgive me,
Mhm.
then I need to start forgiving people. You may create this whole domino effect of forgiveness, and then we're honoring and glorifying God in that, but we're creating better people when we do that. So
Mm.
forgiveness is bigger than just us. We
Yeah.
have to get out of that mindset of it's about what I feel. No, it's about how's it going to impact everyone around us in our environment, and more importantly, like I want my kid. I tell my kids, life is a long road of forgiveness,
Sure.
essentially, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's what I
mean,
say. And
That's good.
yeah, I believe that. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, am I going to have to always forgive people? Like they look at it, because you're younger. The teenagers are starting to get a little bit, but they're still in their own way too. They're pretty self-centered at this point, and that's just normal development. But like they say, I can't forgive everybody for everything when they keep doing the same. Yes, you can. You have to, because that's what God did, right? God,
yeah.
Absolutely.
one of God's last prayers is, Father, forgive them, for
Mhm.
They
they
know
don't
not
know
what
what
they
they
do.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so and
Amen.
and so I just tell them, just expect to have a lifetime of forgiveness. And once you come to terms with that and you embrace that and know forgiveness is a beautiful thing, and quit looking at it as a submissive or weak issue, look at it as strength. I mean, if it was
Absolutely.
easy, then we would be better at it. It's
Right.
not
Yeah.
Yeah.
easy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
No.
So anyway, man, I do say that all the time, not just to my kids, but just to people. I think life in general is just a long, long road of forgiveness.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
good.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
beautiful.
yeah,
awesome.
I like it.
Forgiveness can be hard, especially if you're forgiving your twin for being
an alumni at Ole Miss, you know.
Oh, now I see where the UK comment comes from.
Yeah, you got a bunch of SEC. You got a bunch of SEC people here, and then I'm the weird Oregon
Anybody
fan.
who thinks this is Alabama, no, thank you.
Atlanta, right?
There's no
this
mullet
is Atlanta
on it.
Braves, baby. It's Atlanta Braves.
Well, to go back to what you were saying, Jeremy, I thought it was really beautiful when you were talking about your kids and forgiveness. Like, I ask my children to forgive me when I'm wrong all the time, because they need to know that their dad is not perfect, and they need to know that there's times I need to practice humility and come to them with an apology. But one of the things that we go further on is when we ask our children to apologize to each other when they've wronged each other, is to not only just say, I'm sorry that I did this and that it did this to you, or it hurt your feelings in this way. Do you forgive me? And then we let the other kids say, I forgive you. And so not only is there a practicing of saying sorry, but there's also the practicing of grace and the practicing of forgiveness. And I think one of the other good things, going back to the forgiveness point, my last point on it, is that it gets you out of the victim mode.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, people want to sulk. People want to stay sad when they are sad. And I've experienced that personally in depression and anxiety. And so you got to get yourself out of that victim mentality, and you've got to realize that you're the only person that's going to dig yourself out. You're the only person that can forgive yourself and love yourself. And then you can forgive others and deal with your traumas and your heartaches and your past pains, and you can grow from them. And not only that, but you're going to fix previous behaviors that were caused by those. So forgiveness and empathy are such a beautiful thing, tie hand in hand.
There's a verse from the Bible: "Love covers a multitude of sins." So, what this is just true. Choosing love and unconditional love is that when it's when the conditions aren't great, it's choosing to love when things aren't good. So it's not a natural human trait, right? We want to be nice to people who are nice to us. It's in those rough moments you have to choose and commit to, loving your spouse through it, or loving your kids through the things they're doing. So,
that's one thing. Like if I walked up to another guy, generally, and obviously it'd have to be somebody I kind of know on some level. But if I say, "Hey, I love you," it's uncomfortable for a lot of guys, right? They're like, "Whoa, wait a minute, man." And
they've never had that in their life,
right?
Either that, or they have this thought of, man, love's kind of this feminine, weak emotion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, have you ever loved somebody that didn't love you back? That's pretty difficult, right? It takes guts. Or have you loved somebody who may not necessarily been lovable? Because we're called to do that too. It's not a choice. That's what we're called to do. And then when you start breaking it down like that, they're like, okay, well, maybe love ain't weak. We just really, I mean, it's all the stuff that we're talking about, and even into our being a father, is we have to, like you said, humility. We have to drop that concern of this false bravado, because I think it's a facade, and I think we're not being transparent with our kids when we do that. If I just talk to my son about all the highs, like sometimes he sees things that we do, or he might see, on TV or something like that, and he'll go, "Dad, it was so cool, man. You were," and I'm like, yeah, but let me tell you the cost of some of those things. Let me tell you the cost of success. Let me tell you some of the road to get there and what I had to overcome to get to this point.
Right.
And then, because I want him to have, I don't want to take away his being proud of me. We don't do that, but I want him to understand that you need to love the journey like you love the outcome. Because if you don't, you're never going to get past the journey. And so I want him to know that, I want him to know the successes, but also want him to know the failures. Like, I am not a perfect person. Don't ever look at me as the example. I want to be one of your examples, but he is the example.
Right.
Sure.
I'm just trying to live out what he asked me to live out, the best of my ability as an imperfect man. And when you consistently talk about that, it really makes sense. And so I just think it's really important to make sure that kids know that, we win some, we lose some, but failure is not fatal, and we only lose when we quit. Right. So, man, I'm big on, like, and so Erin, my wife, sometimes will say, "Jeremy, that, you really didn't have to go into, the hardship of that," because my son's never going to ask that, right? At 13, he's not going to be like, "Dad, what went wrong, man? What went wrong?" He's not going to do that, right? But I also don't want to create an expectation that's unattainable, right? And if he just sees successful things, he's going to think, oh, that's what I have to do.
Right.
And then when he realizes that that's not
Yeah.
reality, and he fails and he fails and he fails, he's going to get in this dark place. He's going to be hard on himself. He's going to give up and quit. I need him to know that, no, I lose more than I win, son.
Right.
I lose more than I win every day. Right. But we just keep getting up. We fall down 7 times and get up 8. Right. And that's just what
Yep.
we do. So,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah.
It's interesting too that you kind of hit on that, how you need to own that it's not always perfect, right? And yeah, you may have all the success right now and it's not great, but because I was just reading the Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters book today, and there's literally a chapter on how you're supposed to teach your children humility and how crucial that is. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive. It's like the more you emulate humility and teach them how important it is, the more confident they'll be. And like at face value, it's like, what? No, because they're kind of like, it's like, if you don't do that, you're essentially setting them up for this false expectation that life is gonna, it'll just be all these great things, and then they're gonna hit adversity and be completely shattered by it because they didn't understand that it's both, right? It's the good and the bad, and it is like you're saying, you get back up 8 when you've been knocked down 7. There's a lot, there's a lot more in that chapter. And it's such a great point that Dr. Meeker makes in that chapter, but. It's just funny you brought that up, and I literally just read a chapter today that literally from a clinical, psychologist saying you have to do that. You have to tell your kids that, yeah, you may have all this success and all these great things, but it's like how you got there is not great, and it's not perfect, and all these things you're just modeling, with forgiveness and humility and all these things. You're literally just emulating so that your kids can kind of figure it out, right? You're being an example for them to replicate through their life. And you talked about legacy earlier, Jeremy. That's why fatherhood is so important, is seizing those moments while you've got them at home, to be that example so that they can replicate it in their lives down the road. And if you don't take that seriously, it's gone. You can't take it back. You can't. Once they're grown, they're gone. It doesn't restart. So yeah, it's a serious responsibility, and I'm glad you called that out right from the get-go, right?
Yeah.
It's a responsibility to be a dad. It's
Sure.
I'd argue the most important responsibility you'll have.